Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Alex Baven and I manage the Select Lincolnshire Food and Drink membership at the Lincolnshire Chamber of Commerce. Select Lincolnshire Food and Drink is a not-for-profit membership organisation passionate about providing its members with the help and support and guidance they need. The membership platform enables and facilitates greater connectivity amongst producers locally and with businesses across the wider food and drink network. We aim to support businesses with their growth, helping them develop existing markets and supporting access to new markets, whilst raising the unique profile of Lincolnshire produce locally, nationally and internationally. For today's session, we are focusing on the world of funding and in particular the sources for external investment. Delighted to welcome our panel of speakers today. We're here from Sam Watson, Commercial Director of Burleighs Gin from just over the border in Leicestershire, who will share their external investment journey through crowdfunding and with the FSE Group for the Midlands Engine Investment Fund. Lewis Stringer, Senior Business Manager from the British Bank. Lewis will give us an overview of the current funding market and details about the Midlands Engine Investment Fund. Chirag Mistry, Fund Manager from the FSE Group, who is involved in the... Chirag will give us an overview of the FSE Group and how the group works with businesses who are looking at finance as an option for growth, together with helpful tips in preparing for that journey. Bringing it back to our local Lincolnshire focus, we are very fortunate to be joined by Laura Malaban, Business Support and Angel Network Manager from the Productivity Programme team at Lincoln University, who will give us an introduction to the Business Angel Network and support available for Lincolnshire businesses. And lastly, but by no means least, Russell Copley, Managing Director of Greenborough and also Funding Advisor at British Business Lincolnshire. Russell too will share the opportunities available for those looking at funding and maybe for the first time as well. Firstly, a little bit of housekeeping. Can I ask that you keep your microphones on mute? There will be an opportunity to ask questions and please feel free to use the chat facility. The webinar will be recorded and will be available on our website following the event. Firstly, I'd like to hand over to Sam to give us a brief overview of Burleighs Gin.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen. Fingers crossed this works fine. Right, so my name's Sam Watson. As Alex kindly mentioned, I'm the Commercial Director here at Burleighs Gin. So I'm going to be talking to you guys today a little bit about how funding has really helped our business, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months. So just a bit of background about myself. I've been with Burleighs for 7.5 years now. Initially, my position was in the marketing department. Very much kind of looking initially at developing the brand and kind of establishing a foothold in those kind of formative years of the business. So fast forward 7 years, now Commercial Director. I very much look after the day-to-day running of the business, working across all areas of the business, from sales and marketing to production, new product development. Funding's been a massive help for us. So I'll give you a bit of a background about our business firstly, and then move into the funding side of things. Just a bit about Burleighs. We began back in 2014. As mentioned, we're just over the border. We're in Leicestershire. We were kind of early adopters in the kind of gin boom that's been happening over the last 6-7 years, and we converted a old milking parlour into a distillery. So 7 years later, we've now distilled over 250,000 bottles from our distillery, and we're looking to continue to grow that over the next 3 to 5 years. So we are quite a small team, just 6 of us at the moment, and funding's really helped us to kind of accelerate the business and grow even further. So when we first started out, it was very much a kind of local business. We were selling at local food markets, independent retailers around the local area. But over the last 7 years, we've really established a quite extensive network across the UK, into Europe and Asia, and we're now available in over 20 international markets. So we still very much value our kind of independent values, and we do work with a lot of independent retailers, but we are now working with some bigger clients, including Ocado, Waitrose. We work with the Next Retail Group, Co-op, Cozy Club, and a number of other kind of national listings. We're actually partnered with a number of different companies that have really helped us to kind of expand our brand as well. So we're the official partner of Leicester City Football Club and Leicester Tigers. We also work with the Marilyn Monroe Estate, who are based over in New York. And we're also official producers of the Royal British Legion Gin, helping to raise money for the charity. So a little bit about how we were kind of impacted by COVID and why we were looking to kind of receive some funding. So our business very much relied on wholesale trade. Probably around 70% of our business was through wholesalers selling into hospitality venues, so bars, restaurants, pubs. So obviously when the first lockdown hit last year, it was quite a big impact on our business, and obviously a worrying time for us in the fact that we'd lost our biggest route to market. We did manage to adapt fairly quickly. E-commerce has always been a good focus for us, but was never really the biggest side of our business. So we very much quickly shifted our attentions to that. And that was kind of the thing that kept us going during those early months. As things started to settle and we were comfortable with the position we were in, thanks to kind of selling through e-commerce, we started to look at what the next steps for the business were. So we identified a number of kind of key markets that we felt could really help to boost our business. So I'll come on to those a little bit later, but we very much felt that we wanted to continue driving forward. We didn't want to just survive. We wanted to get our business into a position where when things did start to reopen and normality started to return, that we were actually in a better position than where we started at the start of lockdown. So that's why we felt there was areas in which we needed to receive funding in order to enable our business to do that. So we looked at a number of different options. So the first one that we looked at was crowdfunding. Now this campaign actually was planned prior to COVID, but we did decide to push on despite everything that was going on and go ahead with the raise. So the raise was successful. Our initial target was for £100,000 worth of investment, which we did succeed that target, as you can see from the screenshot here. We raised over £130,000 from 260 different investors. So the campaign was held via the Seedus platform, which we found after a bit of research to be the platform that fitted best with what we wanted to do. And that's worked really well for us. So I think we'll come back to some more information on that later. As well as that, we felt that we were looking for more investment to help us to really kind of boost what we were doing and drive things forward. So that's when we began looking to source some investment and found the Midlands Engine Funding and the FSE Group, working with Chirag. We secured £250,000 worth of funding, some of which was through the coronavirus business interruption scheme. And we felt that this funding really came at an important time for us and allowed us to, push on and accelerate our growth during what was, a really difficult time for many businesses, particularly in our market. So the uses of funding, we've looked at kind of several different areas in which we wanted to use the funding. So we've been able to renovate some of the distillery. So 7 years on, we were kind of looking to give a bit of a facelift to the distillery. We've actually invested into our gin school. So we usually during normal times host a gin school every week where people come along and distill their own bottle of gin. So we've redeveloped the gin school area. We've managed to increase the capacity, and we're now taking bookings and hopefully be welcoming people back towards the end of June, which will be great for us. We're also looking at investing in recruitment and expanding the team. As mentioned, there's only 6 of us at the moment, so we are looking to add another 3 or 4 positions across various areas of the business as things start to really recover and kick back into action. We're also looking to continue with our export growth. We are available within 20 different markets, but there's still a lot of areas in which we've identified that we'd like to enter those markets. Hopefully working with our export partner, we're going to be looking to invest some more funding into that area and continue to grow those markets. Digital marketing and PR, we've also started to invest more in. So Burleighs is a particularly strong brand in Leicestershire and kind of surrounding areas, but we're really looking to have more of a national presence. So that's where the kind of PR side of things comes in. And we're also investing a lot more into our digital advertising to drive our e-commerce sales. Obviously experienced massive growth in e-commerce last year, and we're looking to continue to maintain that growth and really, put a lot of attention into that in case, there is, further lockdowns or any restrictions that may impact us in the future. And also new product development. So prior to Christmas, with some of the initial funding, we were able to invest into 200ml miniature variants of our brand, which has been really helpful, particularly in the off-trade market, who had been demanding for those. And we also launched our first Christmas gin, which sold really well prior to Christmas and was a massive boost for us in terms of revenue coming into the business. Moving forward into this year, we're very close to launching a new collaboration gin that will sit alongside the others that we already have in the range. We're also looking at investing in ready to drink gin and tonic cans, which should hopefully be launching in the next month or so, which is a massive growth area within the spirits industry, and also non-alcoholic. So this is something that we've been kind of developing over the last 18 to 24 months. There's been a huge growth within that market as well. So yeah, we've had a demand for that, and we've been going through a vigorous kind of testing process and looking to launch that later in the year. So yeah, that's a brief overview of where we're at.
Oh, thank you, Sam. That was super. Oh, I feel really quite thirsty now. Just a shame it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So sort of focusing on your sort of crowdfunding experience, you've had amazing success, which you've explained has been enabled you to key sort of fund areas in the business. Why did you look to use crowdfunding as a source of funding?
So we've kind of seen on a larger scale how successful crowdfunding can be for businesses within our industry in particular. Looking on a kind of larger scale, Brewdog, for example, have obviously done it in the past very successfully, and similar businesses to our size, we've seen them in the past go for crowdfunding as well. So kind of the reason behind it for us is we felt that we could use crowdfunding to buy in a number of people to our business and believe in what we're doing and hopefully grow with them. So as mentioned, we had over 250 separate investors who are now very much invested in the Burleighs journey, and investments through crowdfunding could start from as little as £10. So that's, we have a number of investors who have started with that amount. But our plan is kind of a long-term plan with the crowdfunding side of things to really develop that over time. And hopefully as we grow and can evidence, the success, people will then be inclined to, invest further money and we can grow with their help.
Interesting. Obviously customers as well, not just having investors but potential customers, and so that's really exciting. So there's, as you said, there's so many different platforms to choose from in terms of to use for the crowdfunding. How did you decide on the one, Cedars? What sort of stuck out for you that made you think, yes, this is the one for us?
Yeah, so we had a number of conversations with various different platforms. Cedars, we felt kind of from what we'd experienced had the best platform in terms of being able to showcase the business. The user experience we felt was really good as well, and we felt the platform and the way in which they showcased the pitches, we felt that offered the most for us in order to really showcase our business. So yeah, we just the support that they offered, and particularly kind of the marketing and how they could help us get the word out, was really what appealed to us. And yeah, just they simplified it, particularly for myself and our business. It was the first time, obviously, we'd been involved with crowdfunding, and they were really helpful and kind of guided us through the process from day one, really.
Yeah, and in terms of that process, sort of what is it, from sort of deciding actually you're going to choose that platform?
Yeah, so initially we contacted them and said that we were interested in funding, so raising some funds, and really it initially began with just a casual chat really on why we wanted to do crowdfunding. I think what was important for them was for us to really kind of showcase what we needed funding for, and that we had a clear kind of use for funds, and that there was a genuine reason behind why we wanted the funding. So it kind of started with just an introduction and meeting the guys and giving them a bit of background on the history of the business and where we were looking to go. And from there, they could see that we had genuine reason for doing this, that the business had a appeal to, they really understand the investors that are using their platform, and they really believed in our business as well and why we wanted to do it.
I see that Russell's just put a question in the chat. Did you pay to understand the Seeders algorithm?
No, we didn't. We have a partner with our business who have done a lot of work with crowdfunding before through other businesses, so they helped us for a lot of it, but we very much relied on the support that they offered for free of charge, really.
And in terms of who did you have to involve, did you have to get sort of legal teams involved in that whole crowdfunding? Did you have to, sort of the team that you had to assemble?
Yeah, so basically Burleighs has been working with a company called Readiness, who they've been involved with the business for kind of 3 or 4 years. They very much look after, they do our accounting, VAT returns, things like that, but they have a legal department within there, so they were helping out with that. And our account manager was kind of very much involved in helping set up those conversations, and they had that experience that kind of really helped us through with that initial process.
And was it long to set up in terms of deciding, right, this is what we want to do, this is the platform? Was it all quite quick, or?
It was, I think it probably could have been a little bit quicker, but we'd initially started it just before COVID. So then when kind of COVID hit, it was kind of put on a back burner. But I think if you take the delays out from COVID, we were probably around 8 weeks to going from that initial to getting the pitch ready to go, basically.
Wow, that's amazing. And you had, for your campaign, you had a target of 100,000. So how did you decide on that figure?
So we obviously mapped out what we wanted to use the investment for, and we'd, prior to the campaign, done a lot of the legwork in terms of costings and working out, what investment we'd require for those particular projects. So the figure was mainly arrived at from that.
And at that time, they sort of they value the business, don't they? Sort of how is it valued?
So again, that was kind of a joint process really between the Burleighs business, the guys at Readiness, and also the Seeders team. So they have a valuation model that they use that's very much based on your revenue and sales and assets and things like that. So it was kind of a joint process to arrive at the valuation.
I noticed that you gave rewards to investors through discounts for sort of purchases through to Gin Academy experiences, and also a lifetime discounts code, which sounded very appealing, which is sort of a great way to sort of get funders to actually try the gin as well, isn't it? As I said, make them customers and advocates of the brand. Yeah. Obviously, this depends on the product. But does this normally happen? Is this something that was said, this is what you normally do? Or
yeah, absolutely. It was very much encouraged by the team at Seeders. So yeah, a lot of the businesses that do raise via their platform do offer these rewards. Obviously with gin, it's a good one to offer, and obviously has a bigger pool than some products might have. But yeah, we were very much encouraged to offer those rewards, and we did, and we felt that really kind of influenced people as well, that they are getting something out of it from day one, really. So yeah, it did work well from what we can tell.
And are you looking to raise further funds through the investors? So now you said you keep them on this journey, and to support work with them as maybe they might want to invest more, or certainly buy more.
Yeah, so that's definitely the plan, that we'd be looking kind of in the future, whether that's 6 months or a year from now. we'd very much be looking to go out and raise again when there's, you know, projects that we'd be working on that would require funding. Hopefully at that point we can, you know, evidence what the uses of the initial funding have been used for, and by that point hopefully, you know, the cans and the new collaboration product that we have coming out will be out, and it will be successful, so we can kind of showcase the success and what that funding was used for, and then hopefully influence people into investing further and helping us to grow further as well.
Yeah, well, exciting times. Anyone that's looking to do crowdfunding for the first time, what advice will you give them to those that are, you know, embarking on that journey?
Yeah, I'd you know, recommend people definitely to give it a go, and I think it's really been helpful for our business and allowed us to continue pushing forward despite COVID. I think initially it does seem a bit of a daunting prospect, but I think, you know, if you really believe in your business and what you've got to offer, and you've got a clear plan of where you're going and what those funds will be used for, I think other people will believe in your business as well. So I think, you know, really rely on the support of the Seeders team. You know, they are experts at what they do, and they are there to help you. So I think, yeah, like, you know, go for it and see how it can help your business.
Yeah, crowdfunding isn't the only source of funding that you received. As you mentioned, Burley's received a £250,000 investment in February of this year from the Midlands Engine Investment Fund. And before I sort of discuss that process with you, I'd like to sort of hand over to Lewis to give us, from Senior Manager at the British Business Bank, to give a little bit of overview of the current funding landscape and Midlands Engine Investment Fund and the types of funds available.
Lewis Stringer, Senior Manager in the UK Network team at the British Business Bank. Let me explain what the British Business Bank is first. So the British Business Bank is government's economic development bank. What does that mean? Well, it basically means that we address any potential gaps in finance. And when I say finance, I'm talking about debt and equity funding as opposed to grant funding. We do that in order to enable more businesses across the UK to grow as a result. But we also recognise that, albeit in only certain circumstances, some businesses will find it difficult to access commercial funding under normal conditions. Now, pre-COVID-19, there was actually a widely held view that access to finance wasn't actually an issue, that it had more to do with the awareness of businesses of their options, their knowledge of those options, and their ability to be prepared for those finance options, produce business plans, access commercial funders, etc. And there are also issues potentially around the respective ambition and aspiration of those businesses to actually use finance to grow. However, obviously, over the last 15 months, we've all clearly faced unprecedented times, and that's not been unique to the bank. The bank itself has been heavily involved in interventions such as Bounce Back Loan Scheme, lovingly called BEEBLES, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, lovingly called CBILS, and the larger scheme, CL Bills, as well as the Future Fund. So we've almost gone from a position in the marketplace where pre-COVID, actually, if you surveyed SMEs, 75% of all SMEs would actually prefer not to take external finance, okay, even if it meant that they didn't grow as businesses. And those were surveys undertaken on a regular basis by both ourselves and also the Chamber nationally. But we've now gone to a situation where over the last 15 months, over a third of all businesses have had to actually take external finance to survive, let alone grow going forwards. Government, alongside ourselves, has recently launched a scheme called the Recovery Loan Scheme. So those earlier schemes, the BEEBLES, CBILS and CL Bill schemes, have finished for new applications. And to reflect the perception of the roadmap and the vaccination process, government has recently launched Recovery Loan Scheme, which is very much around continuing to support those businesses that are looking to grow, but do require external finance to do so. And I was saying this before we went live, Alex, but I'll say it again. I think at the moment we're in a strange situation in terms of external finance, whereas high street lenders have probably lent unprecedented amounts of money over the last 15 months. There were days this time last year, where actually the amount of money being lent was equivalent to previous years. in totality, and a lot of that was backed by our various schemes. So a lot of the high street lenders, I think, are still dealing with the legacy in terms of existing applications for those schemes before really embarking on the recovery loan scheme, whereas some of the, dare I say, smaller, more fleet of foot funders, such as the FSE Group, are able to transfer over to the recovery loan scheme easier. When you actually dissect the numbers, and I think we, government, will be publishing the final numbers around those COVID schemes over the next month or so, actually deployment by both geography and also sector, interestingly for this morning, was pretty much as you'd expect. So actually, sadly, one of my day jobs is to look at those local authority numbers, and I did that exercise at the start of this year. And actually Lincolnshire, in terms of those loan schemes, actually got its fair share, if that's the right phrase to use. And actually, if you look at the sectors, whether it be manufacturing or subsectors of manufacturing, food and drink sector, for example, then actually the pattern was pretty much as you expect, sector by sector. But that was true of the loan funding. And again, as you'd probably expect, the county of Lincolnshire is well served by high street lender. The business base very generally is quite traditional, family-owned businesses, and they do tend to focus on asset-based lending, which is pretty much the domain of high street lenders. I think as a region, and Lincolnshire as a county, we fall down, is around growth capital. And that's the case for both Lincolnshire and, as I said, the wider East Midlands region. And therefore, it's pleasing to hear the great messages from Sam and Burleighs Gin this morning about a business that has real ambition and aspiration to grow and is prepared to use external finance and various types of external finance to do that. I wouldn't say Sam and Burleighs Gin are the exception, but again, we need more of those types of businesses. So it's great to get the messages from Sam this morning. So my role in the bank is twofold, both to look at those regional disparities faced by parts of the UK outside London and South East, of which the East Midlands and Lincolnshire is an example of that, and to be the eyes and ears of the bank in the region. There are a number of tools that the bank has developed to raise the awareness, knowledge and preparedness of businesses across the UK, and I put two links in the chat, so if you get the chance to look at those, please do, and hopefully, Alex, if you'd be so kind, you'll circulate those links after the event. The first is the Finance Hub. And I'd say this, wouldn't I? But we are an independent government body, so you'd expect me to say it. The Finance Hub is probably the best one-stop shop for finance options. So if you're a business looking at your options and want to know what's out there, the different types of funding that are available, typically what those funders are looking for, I would highly recommend, before you start the journey, to look at the Finance Hub. It's in clear language. We get partners contributing to that. But again, it's very important that you're as informed as possible about your options before you approach funders. And the second tool, which again I provided you the link for, is the Business Finance Guide that the bank produces in partnership with the ICAW. And again, that will, in a simpler form, provide you with the various funding options, including crowdfunding, debt and equity funding, that's available to you as businesses, and the types of things that you need to do to prepare yourself. As I said, both of those links are in the question and answer and chat function. So Alex, please feel free to circulate those. As part of that addressing regional disparities that I talked about earlier, the bank also has a number of regional funds. And put simply, those are funds that are specifically targeted areas of the country that typically businesses may struggle to access that sort of growth capital that Sam's alluded to earlier. And one of those funds, which covers Lincolnshire and the wider East Midlands, is the Midlands Engine Investment Fund. It's made up of the 10 LEP areas that cover the whole of the Midlands. It's made up of 4 different funds, 5 fund managers. There are 2 debt fund managers, of which FSE Group are 1. And they basically provide Midlands-specific businesses with debt and equity funding that isn't readily available in the market, even pre-COVID. So they provide loans from £25,000 up to 1.5 million, from early stage to more established businesses, but they also provide equity funding, which is a version of crowdfunding whereby somebody's investing in your business for a share of the business in the expectation that the value of that business grows over time. And again, we've got fund managers that provide equity funding from £100,000 up to 2 million. As Sam alluded to, Burleighs has recently benefited from the Midlands Engine Investment Fund, and you'll shortly hear from Chirag and the FSE Group that provided that funding. Another one of those fund managers, Maven Capital Partners, will actually be hosting one-to-one clinics for businesses in Lincolnshire at the end of this month. And again, I put the link in there, Alex, if you can circulate after the event. They're one-to-one, face-to-face clinics with people that know what they're talking about. So they won't be there to sell the fund or their individual fund itself. They're there to provide advice and guidance to you from a trusted, independent source. And again, I've added the links to those clinics. If you can't make the Lincolnshire one, it's on 30th of June. There are actually 3 clinics before that date on the 24th, 25th and 29th of June, respectively. So finally, if you're unsure what your options are, what I would say to you, my final bit of advice is there is plenty of advice and guidance out there. Please just contact your bank, your accountants, the Chamber, the Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub, and actually the 2 great universities that you have in the county. I've also put my contact details in there. I'm more than happy to signpost you through the myriad of finance options that are available as well. Thank you, Alex.
Super, thank you, Lewis. That was excellent for setting up our next section. So Sam, sort of going back to you and looking at sort of the investment process that you got from the sort of Midlands Engine Investment Fund, what was involved in that process?
So initially, we had the application process, which was, fairly straightforward. General business details and what level of funding we were looking for. And then we were introduced to Chirag, and we arranged to meet and kind of run through, again, kind of the history of the business and where we've kind of gotten to in our formative years and what we were looking to do with this funding. So we very much kind of went through how COVID had been affecting our business and how we were planning to recover and what we were looking for funding to be used for. So it was obviously helpful to understand and meet with Chirag what opportunities are available for us in terms of funding and how that could be structured and how it can support our business. So it was very much going through that process. We then had to look at forecasting and how we'd be using the investment and how that could return revenue into the business and repayment terms and things like that. So it was an interesting process that really kind of opened our eyes to what kind of funding was available, really.
Yeah, and in terms of the demands on the business, what have they been since accepting that investment?
So we have monthly kind of reporting processes that we have to send through to Chirag. It's relatively straightforward. We have to produce management accounts monthly to send through, just general kind of business performance updates as well, and a few forms to fill out every month, but nothing too demanding, really.
Oh, that's great. And as you've explained, sort of the funding has enabled you to do so many things or plan for so many things. It's sort of renovating the distillery you mentioned and sort of developing a ready to drink can. And it must have been so exciting to have the ability to make plans, which for many, for the last 18 months has been so difficult.
Yeah, definitely. As I say, I think we're not really a business to stand still. Ever since kind of day one, we've been looking to really drive the business. Even when we were local, we've always had ambitions to kind of drive into new areas and really kind of be a front foot business and always moving forward. So we took the opportunity to get this funding because we didn't want to stand still and delay plans. A lot of these plans were kind of coming to fruition pre-COVID, but without the funding, really, there wasn't a way for it to happen because there was an impact on the business losing such a large proportion of our normal trade. So it's been really exciting to be able to keep moving forward. So the ready to drink cans is a massively growing area at the moment. You've probably noticed yourself when you go into a supermarket now, the amount of cans is always expanding. The same with the non-alcoholic. These are real growth areas that can really help us to push our business to the next level. So, you know, we want to move fast. We want to be, you know, one of the earlier brands to get in there and get those out to market. So that's what the funding is enabling us to do, and really kind of keep moving forward and as I say, not standing still.
Yeah, it's taking those opportunities, isn't it? Now, you know, you can't delay that. You've just got to grab it and needing the funds to do that with.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Now, I'd like to welcome Chirag, fund manager from the FSE Group, is going to give us a little bit of background to the group and sort of and how it works with businesses. Yeah.
Morning, everyone. Thanks, Alex. Pleasure to meet you all, and thanks for joining us this morning. What I'll firstly do is I'll just run through what the FSE do and who we are, because not everybody will recognise the name or the organisation. So I'll share that firstly. Thank you. So we're the FSE Group, and as Lewis mentioned earlier, we're part of the Midlands Engine Investment Fund. We manage part of the wider MEIF fund, as it's lovingly known. We're part of the larger debt part, which is 100,000 to 1.5 million. In loan money to businesses to support them to grow and scale. And typically it's where they've not been able to secure funding from the traditional sort, which would be the bank. So a little bit more about FSE. So FSE have been around since 2002, so it's almost coming up to its 20-year mark next year. And it was always established for that gap in the market, so to support SMEs where they're unable to secure funding in the traditional sense. We've got a vast amount of experience within the team. We've got fund managers in the Midlands, including myself. We've also covered other regions such as Cornwall, the Southwest, the outside of London, so the M3 corridor, the east of England, and the Greater London area as well, to support SMEs and businesses. We are FCA regulated, so we follow all the same regulations that the banks would do and other funders. We're still a CIC, so we're a community interest company. So everything we do is for the benefit of the enterprises that we support, but also the local communities, and giving that impact back through our funding and lending that we do. So to date, we manage around 200 million in funding across 18 different LEPs. And to date, we currently have about 60 million lent out and invested, because in some of our other regions, such as Cornwall and also in Greater London, we've got equity investment as well as debt funding. But in the Midlands, we focus purely on debt to support businesses. And just a little bit more very quickly around where we are in the market. So we are genuinely a gap in the market. So we're not there to compete with others. We're there to complement and work alongside other funders to support businesses. So we do work alongside other specialist lenders, equity, and also traditional bank funding, where they're unable to stretch as much as they can to support a business at a particular moment in time. And as both what Sam alluded to earlier, what we're really focusing on is understanding what that business journey looks like. So what journey have they been on? Where are they now? And where do they look to go? And where can we support and work with them and fit in through our debt finance to support them? Around that, we structure and tailor our funding that's most appropriate. So our securities tend to be typically a lot lighter than you would get from a bank. Our terms are up to 5 years because we feel that where a business is growing, we shouldn't need to be investing any longer than that, apart from a relationship point of view. Beyond the 5 years, from a lending point of view, we hope we've successfully supported those businesses to reach their aspirations and goals. And our timescales typically could range anything from a few weeks to a couple of months. That's from start to finish. So it can, in occasions, be a lot quicker than traditional banks. But again, it's to work alongside them and equity to get the right result to support that business. So that's a little bit more about FSE. In the Midlands, we're currently a team of 6 across. We've got a head of funds, Andy. We've got a fund exec, Harriet, and then there's myself and 4 other investment managers that cover the East and West Midlands, including Lincolnshire, Leicestershire, and surrounding areas as well. we reach as north as Grimsby, as south as Luton, as far west as the Hereford, with the border of Wales as well.
Thank you, Chirag. That was sort of really interesting, and just sort of set the scene as to what the fund does and sort of your roles. So why was Burleighs Gin investment application so compelling?
Firstly, I enjoy gin. I think that was my first compelling reason to become interested.
Good for me.
Yeah, and I think part of it was once I understood what Burleighs were about, it piqued an interest. There were Midlands, there were a local based gin distillery producer. They had some, there was a history, there was a story there. There was a reason why they were in the marketplace and what they wanted to deliver. There was also merit there with the strength of the brand itself, how well they'd done to date in the 6 years leading up to when I first started engaging with Sam and Burleighs Gin, and where they're already reached to. So having, accolades and partnerships with the likes of Leicester City Football Club, the Tigers, and there's more to it to that as well. The fact that they're working with the likes of the Royal British Legion and some others, which I won't mention, which I'll leave Sam to highlight if he wishes to, but it's more than just a gin brand. So what they want to do is also do more for the region, do more for some of the organisations they're supporting and working with, but the quality of the product as well. So not just the taste, but the process they go through. It very much is hands-on. They really do look after what they do. There's that ethos there. There's an element of recycling what they use as well. So there was a lot of merits there, and the purpose of what they wanted the funding for really fitted with what the MEIF and FSE Group are about, which is to help Midlands-based SMEs to grow. And yes, there was an impact from COVID, which staggered that growth, and we wanted to be able to support them to ensure that they can continue to go on that journey, even though it right shifted in terms of timeline of where they wanted to be. We wanted to ensure that they can continue to do that. So through the things Sam's mentioned, retaining their workforce, but also growing their workforce as they continue to come out of lockdown and the current restrictions to support the business. But they've got a fantastic range of products coming to market, which even some of their competitors are not doing. So to be able to establish and help Burleighs Gin bring those to market to do something different, which also can generate a level of competition and help others to do more as well, and help Burleighs Gin further expand internationally and take that brand outside of the UK and be a bit of a flag leader for British brands out there in the wider community. So there were some of the key merits, and also the fact that Sam's been there for a long time. He's been there from almost the start. He's been part of the journey, and to have somebody there that is ingrained within the business really supports why we want to support that business, because you've got somebody who is really enthused, really invested, and Sam's backable, and the team at Burleighs Gin are backable. So that's also a really key important point why I wanted to work with them and why I wanted to support the business.
I've just seen Lewis has just put a question in the chat. How does the mindset of the business owners help with the application process?
It's massive. Having that engagement. So having that engagement and funding it until you get to the point of needing to borrow money or look at equity, it will be new. So it was a relatively, it was new to the management team and to Sam to invest the time and the requirements of our conversations and what we needed before we're able to get to a position of supporting the business. So the process can vary depending on the business we're working with and their experience with funding. With Burleighs, it was still fairly new, so it just comes down to spending enough time and having that engagement and working step by step through that process with them, rather than a bit of an information overload. But I think from my point of view, it was fairly straightforward and seamless with Sam and his team, because they've got great partners behind them that are fully engaged with the conversations and meetings that we had around what we needed and what I needed to understand, not just about the business, but the financial information as well.
Russell's just put a question in, because Burley's already gone through that crowdfunding process. Did that sort of influence sort of FSE's view on suitability for the debt?
Yeah, it always adds value, because a business has been through the process of one, pitching. So there was a good pitch and business plan to understand and where the business wanted to go. And also it supports that traction where you've got, whether it's through seeders or other types of equity investors, they also see that there is a business here to support. So there is some traction here, there is something here more than just a gin company to be able to back. So yes, absolutely, having equity investment, whether it sits alongside it at the same time or before or after as a plan, either side of debt funding, does have a positive impact on the business and our decision making as well.
And sort of now sort of the investment's happened, sort of what's your role sort of following that?
Yeah, so my role is to continue to work with Sam and continue to keep up to date and understand how the business is getting on. We've got to manage that, ensuring that the loan is fulfilling its purpose and it's managed from a risk point of view. But then on the other side, it's continuing to work with Sam and providing kind of support that he or the team at Burleighs Gin would need. Because my role is not just around lending money, it's really understanding the business, seeing what other value I can add or what we can add from FSE from a non-financial point of view. So there may be aspects now or in the future where Sam may need support. We may not be able to fulfill those, but the important thing is that we can help him work towards those, or at least put him in front of the right people to give the business that right support that they need, whether it's now or in the long-term future. Because the purpose of what I do and what we want to do is to ensure any business that we work with, whether we fund them or not, is that they're successful, that they achieve their goals. And I think that's the most important thing out of all of it.
And in terms of a business looking at wanting to obtain investment, do they need to have a clear plan, or is that something that you sort of sit down together and formulate? There's not sort of, I mean, you talked about the pitching process. It's not sort of like Dragon's Den style, this is it, is it very much a process to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think each business has a different journey. Some will be a lot more refined, so they may have gone through equity investment or through funding before, so they'll know exactly what the business plan would be. Others will be quite early in that journey, but they understand that they've got a potential need for some funding, whether it's via equity or debt. And it's a case of working with them to see where they are within that journey and understanding their initial business plan. I think most business owners and borrowers understand where they want to get to. It's actually that being put into a plan, a specific plan and structure. And we'll work with them. So I'll work with them to understand where they are now and where they want to get to. And so sometimes it's not always appropriate that we're the right option for them. But what's important is that I work with them to get them to the point where we can support them financially, or they can at least get the right partner to work with them, whether it's their bank or through equity or a combination of different avenues that they can get that support that they need.
And I suppose that's all part of the process of appraising them for suitability. As you mentioned, this might not be the right route for them, and it's sort of, telling them that, these are the options, isn't it? And where they want to get their goals. Yeah,
absolutely. What's really important is that the business gets the right support, because it can be a mindful out there. There's so many different options of funding available, both with equity and debt, that I think it's important that we invest and we take the time to understand what their needs are and what the business does, so we can support them in the right way. And if we're not the right option, that we do the right thing by supporting them to get the right option, or at least have the right conversations with the right people.
Just had a question from Alison from Langley Solicitors. Do any of these funders have operational position or influence on the running of the company, or are the companies given a free rein?
From FSE and the debt perspective, we don't hold a board position or anything like that. It very much is a partnership and relationship. So we want to be involved with the business to see the success. We're not there to control or have controlling share. In the Midlands, we are not equity investors, it's debt only. But again, it's around that relationship and where can we add value and support you. So not just from a funding aspect, from a non-funding aspect as well. In the Midlands Engine Investment Fund, something Lewis touched on earlier, there are both debt and equity options. On the equity options, which I'm not too much privy to, there may be requirements within there, depending on the level of investment and other types of equity investment that they may want to get involved from a board point of view.
It's now good to bring Lewis in at this point, just for him to talk about sort of those equity funds and the availability of them.
Yeah, just coming on the equity side of things, it comes back to what I was talking about earlier around growth capital and the mindset of businesses, particularly in our region in Lincolnshire. We're not unique, but I think more so than probably anywhere else, Alex, I think in the East Midlands, there are too many people out there that rightly or wrongly have got the mindset that an equity investor is going to take control of my business. It's my baby. They're going to do things differently. The reality is, this is why it's so important to align yourself with your funders stroke investors from the outset. Because yes, with an equity investor, they're going to invest primarily, crowdfunding is slightly different, but most of the equity fund managers that we deal with are going to want your business to grow. They're a partner, investor, shareholder in your business, and therefore there will be times when they will want to work with you to direct the business, and it may not be in the direction you originally thought. Most early stage businesses that are investing will do what we call pivot. Pivot's become one of those buzzwords, more particularly over the last 15 months. So a lot of businesses have pivoted, had to pivot for innovation, technology, impact, but actually pivot's been a long-standing word in the finance industry. And it's a reflection of the fact that actually very few founders will have all of the skills necessary to grow their business. But actually one of the benefits, which is often undersold of an equity fund manager, is that they've been there, done it. They've got the experience, they've got the contacts that probably you need if you're going to grow the business, because you won't know everything. And sometimes, yeah, they'll want to take you into a certain direction. Our fund managers, yes, will typically take a board position, and or they'll appoint an NED. And again, some of the more successful equity invested portfolio companies I've had a scenario whereby the fund manager has introduced a chair onto the board that has the skills that the founders themselves have identified as a gap. They've got the contacts, the networks, they've been there, done it, and they actually can add some real added value. And I've got to be honest, the business is more than likely to be more successful as a result of that. So if you want to grow your business and that's your route, then again, equity has as many advantages as it has this fear of losing control. But yeah, we'll sit on the board directly or indirectly. Yeah.
It's a question for Sam, actually. There's a few coming in, which we might as well discuss now. Has Burley's been able to access any growth grants as part of your growth journey?
It's not something we've explored massively, actually, to be honest. We have received one of the recovery grants through our local council when they were released probably a couple of months ago now. So we have accessed that, but it's not something we've massively explored. So I think probably potential for us to look into that.
I see Russell nodding. And there's also other grants available. I know we've got Barry here from Access to Funding. You sort of mentioned R&D tax credits, which I know that probably Chirag, Russell and everyone that's involved, that's very much coming to the fore at the moment in terms of support for R&D.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have had I think last 3 years we've had successful R&D tax credit claims for all the projects that we've been working on. We're quite busy, so we get up to quite a bit within 12 months. So yeah, we have put those in and been successful in the past, which has been helpful.
Yeah, it's just keeping an eye for them, aren't they? Because that can make a real difference, can't it? So sorry, going back to Chirag, in terms of I know we've spoken that there's not necessarily a pitch involved, it's more sort of an ongoing relationship and conversation as to where the businesses want to get to. In terms of the process, you said it can take sort of weeks up to sort of months or a few months, just depending on, I suppose, how prepared maybe the business is. Can you help speed that up? Is there things that you can do to support them in that speeding up that process, or is it really just has to take the time it takes?
I think it varies depending on how ready a business would be in that journey. For funding. So sometimes it's a case of having key moments where when you engage with a business. So the earlier you engage, the longer that process may feel, when really it's a case of you're building that relationship to understand each other. So we're understanding the business and the business is understanding what we're about and what we can do to support and add value. So some businesses will be ready fairly quickly. Within a matter of weeks, we'll be at a position where we can structure and put something together to support them and confirm that support. With others, it can be it could be a few months. I've worked with businesses. I think the longest would be starting a conversation last summer, and more recently been in a position where we've confirmed our support. And so there's never a rush from my side or our side. It's actually working with them in the right way until that point of where they need that support. And on some occasions, as you work with them, it's something Lewis mentioned, you pivot. The business is either pivoted in a different direction, or where they've been, that what we offer is not appropriate. But what's the main thing is that we can help them to get to a point where they're ready for some kind of support.
And I suppose those businesses that are looking to go down the investment route, what I've heard from you is very much engage early and have that conversation. You don't have to have a plan completed. It's very much finding out what the options are available. Is there anything else that you would add to those that are looking to look at that route? Yeah,
sure. So it's something what Lewis mentioned on some of his statistics and figures. Not all businesses plan to borrow. They wish to do it themselves, but don't shy away from engaging with your banks in the first instance if you have that relationship, your chamber, your growth hubs, and any other business finance providers that you may know, your accountant as well, to plan ahead. If you don't have your business plan formulated, it's something to start working on and plan for some kind of funding, whether that's through equity or through debt, and seeing what that looks like. And have those conversations, because I think the biggest challenges that can come is not understanding what those requirements may be, or there may be a level of fear, thinking that you're not able to get funding, when actually there are plenty of options out there. So it's planning ahead, work with the advisors that are available to you, have those discussions early. What would it look like if I wanted to borrow money, wanted equity investment to support my business to grow, or even continue on in the journey that it's already going without aggressive growth? And do I need that additional support? Because the added value comes from not the funding, but the people you're engaging with and what advice, support and guidance that they can give you along that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Conscious of time, so I'm going to hand over to Laura Malaburn, Business Support and Angel Network Manager. And she's going to give us the sort of support available, also give us an overview of the Angel Network and also the support available for Lincolnshire businesses.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you for inviting me along to speak today. I'm Laura. I'm the Angel Network Manager at Lincolnshire Business Angels. Can I just say before we start, I quite often do a lot of these presentations alongside Russell Copley, and sometimes we touch on the same areas, and he always gets to go before me and scuppers my presentation. So I'm so pleased, Alex, that you put me first today, and he's got to think on his feet. So I'm really excited anyway to tell you a little bit more about Lincolnshire Business Angels. Okay, so Lincolnshire Business Angels is part of the productivity programme for Greater Lincolnshire. The programme has 6 strands and it's made up of the following. So it offers businesses throughout Greater Lincolnshire access to grant funding up to the value of £10,000. You can also access the university's academic expertise, and you can have up to 16 days assistance on a productivity voucher. So if you've got a business concept and you need to write an algorithm, but you don't understand how to do that, you can use the professors at the University of Lincoln to help you do that free of charge under this programme. You can access graduate internships and get up to £3,000 towards the cost of employing somebody. There's specialist advisor support, which is supplied by Greenborough, so you can get up to 12 hours assistance with business planning and increasing your productivity. There's the Graduate Startup Fund, which allows up to £10,000 to start up a new business. That's recently increased from £3,000. And last but not least, there's the Angel Network, which is part funded by the European Regional Development Fund and part funded by the Lincoln Science and Innovation Park. So in terms of who is eligible to access this programme, it's any small to medium enterprise in Greater Lincolnshire. So as long as you have less than 250 employees and turnover less than 50 million, we're able to assist you. You need to have been in receipt of less than £200,000 of de minimis state aid within the past 3 years. And we can facilitate help in most business sectors. There's very few restrictions. You can find out more about the productivity, about the restrictions at the Productivity Programme website, but retail and education, bank and insurance are some of the main ones that we can't assist with. To get support under the Productivity Programme, you need to have an innovative idea or something that's going to increase productivity within your business. You can't ask for funding for just run-of-the-mill business activities or equipment. So understanding a little bit more about angel investors, who are they and why do they do what they do? Well, angel investors are known as ultra-high net worth individuals or high net worth individuals or sophisticated investors. So it means that they earn a certain amount a year, or they've got a certain amount in net assets, or they've got a certain amount of experience as a professional or a business owner or director of a business. They use their own money to invest in other companies, and it's a direct investment. It isn't something that's brokered through the stock exchange. They take the risk. So they invest in very early stage businesses. It may or may not have a minimum viable product at this stage, and it's typically the area that high street banks aren't able to support. They offer mentorship as well as investment, so it isn't just a cold cash transaction. They're there to help you and support you and grow your business, share their social capital and their network with you to help you grow. And we know that over 80% of angel investors invest in businesses within an hour of where they live. So they very much support the local economy. So why do angels invest? Well, apparently it's fun and exciting. There is a altruistic link there as well in terms of wanting to support local businesses and also wanting to support people on the same journey that maybe they've gone through themselves. If you get your portfolio right, it can be very profitable. So if you look at the graph on the right in comparison to the alternative investment market or the FTSE 100, the returns can be a lot more lucrative. And there are also a lot of tax relief benefits under the seed investment enterprise scheme or the enterprise investment scheme that can help mitigate a lot of the investors' risk if a loss was to be made. So looking at the investment landscape, in the UK, angel investing is a growth market, and actually worldwide, we're only really second to the US in terms of our angel activity. We are ahead of the curve from the rest of Europe. We know that angels like to group together to invest, which is why you will find angel networks and why we've created one in Lincolnshire. So 4 out of 5 angels like to club together and spread the risks and share the benefits when it comes to investing. The vast majority of angels have used a tax relief scheme on at least one of their investments. That's what makes it attractive to them. It helps mitigate their losses. So if you are thinking of raising equity investment, I would strongly suggest you speak to your accountant about getting registered for the SEIS or EIS schemes. And typically, an angel will invest £25,000 in an individual company with a follow-on investment of £7,500. And angel investment is known as patient capital because quite often the investment span is up to 6 years before they get the return on their investments. You will notice on the graph on the left, sorry if you can just go back, thanks Alex, in terms of the investment landscape, that East Midlands is one of the least active areas on the list. So we do have a large task ahead of us to catch up with those in the golden triangle, but we're determined to support local businesses and improve that figure going forward. This graph here just shows you the investment life cycle of a business, and you will see here that angels are the people that invest at the very, very early stage of funding where there is high risk. Venture capital companies don't tend to get involved until a little bit later on, until they're more break even or making a small profit. So angels do understand it is a risky business. They do tend to have a wide portfolio of investments because they do understand and appreciate that many of them are going to fall into this valley of death. But hopefully the one or two of their investments that make it is enough to make it profitable for them. So in terms of the Lincolnshire Business Angel timeline, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how and when we set up. So I was appointed in February 2020, so just last year, to set up Lincolnshire Business Angels. I came to this role as a previous entrepreneur. I had an IT and telecoms business, which I set up in 2007. And I had an exit in 2015 and went on to invest in a couple of tech startups myself. So I have been on both sides where I've been setting up and growing a business and trying to raise funding and going through to exit. And I've also been an investor myself. So that's the experience I bring to the role, and that's why I like helping other people on this journey. In March 2020, obviously COVID hit, so I was literally 6 weeks into the role, and I had to pivot and assist people with surviving rather than accessing equity funding. So I worked very closely with the banks and other funders to help local businesses access the government support schemes that were introduced. In June 2020, after a slight adjustment to coronavirus, we just decided to go full steam ahead, and we went on a recruitment drive for local angels to join the network, and also we put feelers out there for businesses looking to raise equity funding. And in August 2020, we ran our first investment readiness course, which led to 3 businesses pitching for us at our very first event in October 2020. And then in March this year, we had our first business secure investment from our network. So as part of running Lincolnshire Business Angels, we provide investment readiness support. We offer a 2-day accelerated course in investment readiness. It's largely run by a gentleman called Dr. Matthew Checkley. He's been delivering this content across the Midlands for the past 20 years and has got award-winning content in there. He has a PhD in venture capital and business strategy. He's written a book on raising equity finance, has raised equity finance himself and has worked as an investor. So he's really well-rounded and experienced to support you through your journey. We like to work with businesses that are looking to raise investment within a 6-month period. And we help them to understand the investment cycle, and we prepare people for the end game. So we prepare people to work with venture capitalists, because our motto is that if you prepare for them, then you prepare for anything. We'll help you build and refine your pitch, help you keep it simple, stand out, because angels may see hundreds of businesses pitched to them throughout a year. And it's really important that you can tell your story and stand out and be remembered. We'll help you understand how to get in the mind of investor, how to understand their natural skepticism and what their objections may be to investing in you, and to defend your position in advance. We'll help you with your valuation and quantifying your worth, and we'll give you the opportunity to live practice your pitch and get feedback, not only from industry experts, but from other business owners in the region as well. So in terms of next steps for us as a network, we are trying to raise awareness. There's still lots of people out there that don't know that Lincolnshire Business Angels exist. So I would encourage everyone on this call today to spread the word if you get opportunity. We want to support as many businesses as we can. We obviously want to recruit more angels and build a self-sustaining network. We are funded at the minute by the European Regional Development Fund, and we do still have about 2.5 years left on that funding, but at some point we will need to be self-sustaining. We want to expand our network connections, the idea being that we just want to support as many local businesses as possible. It isn't necessarily always about Lincolnshire Business Angels being the vehicle to help grow businesses, but just getting businesses that growth support, whether it's through us or through another angel network. We need to have those connections to make sure businesses can thrive locally, and we want to stimulate the local economy as well. And that leads me on to fielding questions if anyone has any.
Laura, for new angels, what's the lowest amount of investable funds they'd need?
Okay, good question, Russell. Thank you for that. I think a lot of people have the image of Dragon's Den in their mind when they think about equity investment, and that investors need to be sat there with a huge suitcase full of cash. That isn't the case. I've had investors that have invested as little, I say as little, as £2,500 in a business. But I would say typically angels will group together, and it may be £5,000, £10,000, £20,000 per investor in a business, and they'll group together to create that large sum that the business needs. And it's not just raised always through one angel network. They may get £50,000 from one angel network, 100,000 from another. So networks do tend to work together to assist businesses in raising their round. So.
Jodie from Lincolnshire Honey has asked, is there a fee for the course?
There isn't at the minute, no, because we are fully funded by the European Regional Development Fund. We can offer this out to businesses in Greater Lincolnshire, fully subsidised, as long as you meet the requirements of being an SME and you've not had more than £200,000 of de minimis aid in the past 3 years. So no, it's free to access, and our next course is going to be later this month. I think it's the 24th and 25th of June. I do still have 1 or 2 spaces. So if anyone is interested in going on that course, please contact me ASAP, because I'm just firming up attendees now. And we run quarterly pitch sessions, with our next one being July the 21st. And it's going to be a face-to-face pitch session, which we've never done yet. So I'm really excited about that. And it's going to take place at Mosaic Digital Hub. So if anyone wants to get involved in pitching their business idea, please get in touch sooner rather than later.
Larissa's got a question. Typically, where do pitches businesses looking for angel investment fall down?
It can be a number of areas. So it can be overvaluing themselves. That's a common one that I see. In terms of angel investment, angels tend to back the jockey more than the horse, so it's very much about you and the team. So there definitely needs to be a strong focus on your experience, your passion, your ability to pivot. An angel would need to get a good understanding of how easy you would be to work with and possibly mentor. So overlooking your value and the team's value can be a big error. And also we have a lot of businesses that will, or I've seen a lot of businesses pitch, and they're so engrossed in their own world, and they'll explain things in the terms that they best know how, that they'll walk out the room and the investors will look at each other and say, what on earth was all that about? You really need to learn how to explain things very simply, as if no one in the room understands anything about your business and industry. So so that people understand your message and what it is you're trying to do and achieve, because if they don't get that in the first place, you're never going to go on to get the funding. So.
And how long are those pitches? How long?
It can range. We at Lincolnshire Business Angels give people 10 minutes to pitch, and then they field questions from the investors for 10 minutes, and then we ask them to leave the room or the conference, and the investors will then talk amongst themselves about what they've seen, and then they'll take a vote on whether they're interested in any follow-up or not. But it is different for different networks. 5 minutes can be quite common as well. So it just depends, but we're generous, we give you 10.
That's brilliant. Conscious of time, and Russell's waiting in the wings, so that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura. And I suppose if people want to find out more, it's just really to get in touch with you, to have a sort of a conversation, and then to take it further, or potentially go on one of your courses.
Absolutely, yes. I look forward to hearing from people.
So finally, Russell, it's your turn. Managing Director from Greenburgh is going to give us an overview of the funding support and initiatives across Lincolnshire and how to get started.
I'm very conscious of time, so I will be ludicrously brief, and I'll blame Laura for taking all of my time and taking all of my content. But as Lewis said, she does it so much better than I do. So good morning, everybody. As Alex said, my name is Russell Copley. I'm not going to talk about Greenburgh. I'm going to talk about the roles that we fulfil for the Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub. For those that aren't familiar with the Growth Hub have a number of generalist advisors. And I suppose I liken that to kind of GPs of the business world. They're general practitioners, they're general business advisors, they're very, very good at lots of things, but they're not specialists at anything. And I'm trying to avoid the word expert, as I'm sure Paul will recognize. But within the Growth Hub, we also have some specialist advisors. So Paul Ward, who's on the call today, is the specialist Agri and Horti advisor. And we are, for want of a better description, the specialist access to finance, investment readiness, funding readiness advisors. What that means is through the Growth Hub, you can get access to our time, our support, and our mantra, which kind of brings everything together, I think, that we've been talking about this morning, is helping businesses in Greater Lincolnshire find the right funding at the right time. So we cover the range of external finance options, from grants through debt to the various types of equity. So crowdfunding, business angel equity, but also venture capital funds. We also get involved very heavily in helping businesses draft grant funding applications. Relatively few and far between at the moment. If we'd have been having this conversation a couple of years ago, I could probably have bored you to death with 18 different grants that were available in Lincolnshire. That's narrowed down a lot. Laura talked about the productivity programs grant. I guess the other one that is kind of live and valid for those that are looking at capital, plant and machinery is a project called Grants for Growth, and we can help you submit funding applications to that. We're also managing the County Council's large capital grant scheme at the moment, the one that was launched in March, the Invest for the Future Fund, currently closed for applications. But just to give you a scale, so this is a kind of food and drink forum. So you fit within one of two categories, either agri-food or visitor economy, depending on where you are within that food and drink spectrum. We have grant funded about £165,000 into the agri-food sector in the last few weeks, and well in excess of £500,000 into the visitor economy sector. And just to kind of put a wrapper on what Laura talked about the Business Angel Network, we run our own unashamed clone of Dragon's Den every year. Last year was the first time we've run it virtually, but for the previous 7 years, we've run it in the real world with real people and real wine. It's called Taming the Dragons. It's a really very, very unashamed ripoff. It will be running again in November this year. It'll be our 9th version. And what that is that's an opportunity for businesses who are relatively early in their equity funding journey to pitch to a panel of 4 investors, but in front of an invited audience of the great, the good. So several of the people that you'll have heard of this morning are part of the audience. And if I can twist their arm, 1 or 2 of them might even be part of the panel. But it's a really great experience, a great opportunity for you to get coaching through to that point but also to pitch in a real world but safe environment. So it's like Dragon's Den, but with nice people and less TV cameras. And I'm very conscious that there's only 5 minutes left to go on this call. So Alex, I'm gonna call it quits and blame Laura.
Is there any money at the end of it, Russell, or is it just all the experience and the process behind it?
It depends how much I can leverage from my sponsors, Alex. Last year there was a 750 quid cash prize. It's somewhere of that order.
Or some gin, maybe.
If I have a word with Burleighs, other gins are available. I'm just thinking we've got at least 3 in Lincolnshire. It's pitching for a prize, but actually over the, what have we done, 8 years now, 4 of the businesses pitching have gone on to get really quite substantial equity investment. One of them actually more or less on the night. So, you know, it is a showcase event, but it's also real.
Mm. And in terms of businesses looking for funding, where would you direct them to first? Obviously yourself at Business Lincolnshire to have that initial discussion, and then you can sort of point them in the right direction. And
I guess 2 answers. If you like talking to real people, find out who your Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub advisor is. If you like looking at the internet, go to businesslincolnshire.com. There is a tab on there called funding. And it's got all of the available grants, but it's also got links to the MEIF funds, other funds that are around, and it's a great place to start scoping out what you might be looking for. And if I could just echo what Chirag said earlier, you know, planning is everything. I spend a lot of my time helping businesses plan what they might need in 3 and 5 years' time, and then kind of extrapolating back to what does that mean you have to have now? Having a funding strategy is probably as important as having a business strategy, but very few people do.
Absolutely, it's prepare, isn't it? I think is very much that's come from this morning. It's sort of looking where you want to get to in the future and putting a plan together to get there, and using and connections obviously is very key. You know, when Chirag said about that connectivity with maybe it might not be something that they will get involved in, but they can connect with somebody that or a team that can. So it's very much growing your network as well. Because you never know who can support you. Conscious of time, 3 minutes left. I don't know if anyone else has got any questions or wants to raise any point at this time. I know we've had a few questions about R&D in the chat. I think Paul Ward, he's still there, but I'm not sure whether he's still available. Will the different funding options be applicable to agri and horticultural businesses looking to reinvest, perhaps diversify from pure ag and horticulture? Such businesses are usually low. I think this was just after your presentation. I don't know if Paul's, no, he's just gone. That's typical, isn't it? Oh no, he's there. If you want to unmute yourself, Paul, was that to do with Laura's presentation?
Yeah, it's really one of the biggest problems is getting funding for agriculture and horticulture in the general sense, and it's trying to really reach out to people who might be interested in funding it. Agriculture is more long term, but I think also as time goes forward, it won't be strict agriculture. People are starting to diversify and look at different things on the farm. So some people have fish ponds, other people have tourism, other people make alcohol, etc. And really it's trying to identify streams where people can go to have that conversation. Part of what we're trying to do as well is also get people ready to have the resilience to deal with the changing economy out there. But no, I'm just interested to know who from the different presenters to talk to if anybody wants to know about funding.
I think Lewis has put his hand up as well, and Russell. So if I go to you, Lewis, first.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So as Paul will be aware, agriculture in terms of digging things out of the ground has always been a difficult one for the public sector, and it tends to split its funding and have specialist funding for those types of businesses. However, I think some of those rules will change with Brexit. What we've seen, particularly in terms of Midlands Engine, and being particularly good in terms of Lincolnshire, is the agri-food, agri-tech, horticulture side of things. So actually we've made a number of investments in those sectors. but the pure digging out of the ground is difficult. Diversification of farm businesses has always been a policy objective and funded accordingly through various organisations, including current ones. So diversification has always been one that's not had the same issues as pure agriculture. But again, in terms of your question, agri-tech, horticulture are businesses that the Midlands Energy Investment Fund managers have already lent to and invested in.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Oh, it's just gone 11:30. We're still here, so that's good. Russell, I don't know if you just want to add a few more comments.
Just one very brief one. So we did a quick tot up yesterday of the Invest for the Future Fund, and it's not in the public domain yet, but we've currently approved 30 grants, and I've just done a quick tot up, Paul. I should think 6 of those have been for farming diversification projects. So some of those have moved into the visitor economy. Some of them have actually been really quite diversified, but they're eminently grant fundable.
Oh, good.
That's brilliant. Well, I'd just like to say a very big thank you to all our speakers today, especially Sam. Thank you very much for sharing your investment journey with us. I think it's been a really insightful morning. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us, and please do get in touch, as I'm always keen to hear the topics that you'd like us to cover, in forthcoming events. Our next event is going to be on the 7th of July, and it will focus on pitching to a retailer. So I look forward to seeing you all then. But thank you again very much for joining us. It's been brilliant, and I will make sure that all the information in the chat will be shared with everybody. But hope you have a nice day, and look forward to seeing you again.